and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Have the roll call, Mr. DePisa, please.
Mr. Balsamo.
Here.
Mr. Cornacella.
Here.
Mrs. Dancheck-Martin.
Here.
Mr. DeMayo.
Here.
Mr. Ferraro.
Here.
Mrs. Quirk.
Here.
Mr. Riley.
Here.
Ms. Zarrow.
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Here. Before we get started, I'd like to just have a moment of silence for friends and family, personnel that are dealing with difficult times right now. We all know someone, and just let's have a moment of silence, pray in your own way. Thank you very much. I need the approval of the minutes, please.
Approval of minutes.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any correspondence?
No.
Okay. Before we start the presentation, I'd just like to remind everybody there are a lot of people online tonight. If you are not speaking, please keep your microphone off. It makes it difficult for the rest of us, including me, having to keep mine off when I'm not speaking. Right now, we'll have Mr. Pyro come forward, please.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody is doing well. Tonight, we are going to honor the 2020 Nutley Raider football team. Before we get into the presentation, I just want to thank everybody who had a hand in making the season successful. It was not easy. The kids and the coaches had to work outside the lines and been faced with some adversity that we've never been faced before. Shortened seasons, quarantines, you name it, we got thrown at us. And I want to thank some people in particular for all their help and support to get us through this season. It was not easy, and it was a team effort outside of the line. So I'd like to thank, again, the Board of Education for their support. I'd like to thank our new business administrator, Dave DePisa, for his support, Mike Parigi and the buildings and grounds and custodial staff, what they did for us, disinfecting, getting things prepared. I mean, they went above and beyond. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Frank DeMayo and the Parks and Recreation staff for all their help and their support. And last but certainly not least, and she did this with no credit whatsoever and didn't want any credit, but I'm going to give it to her now. One of our biggest supporters and somebody that really was a help to me this season was Dr. Julie Glazier. She made some big time phone calls during the course of the year to make sure that our kids got treated well and treated right, and reached out to some of her fellow superintendents and really made a big difference, particularly in our opening day game. So Dr. Glazier, on behalf of the football program and the kids, I want to thank you for that. It was a phenomenal year given the circumstances, with a phenomenal group of kids. These boys, I've been watching them since they were little kids, and it was a pleasure to see their success. I put together a presentation of all of our highlights, both as a team and as individuals, so I don't want to steal the thunder. But again, I want to thank Coach DiGregorio and all of his staff, his entire staff, for making it a memorable year and a memorable season. And from everybody, from our cheerleading program, our band, everybody had to work, again, outside the lines and get thrown into an environment that we're not used to. And we all did, in my opinion, extraordinarily well. And it's because of the culture here in Nutley. It's because of the people that support us. It's because of the community that we live in, which, in my opinion, is second to none. It's a community that wraps its arms around you, particularly in times of trouble. So, again, I appreciate all the help. I thank you for letting me do this job. It's the best job in the world. So, Ian, if you're ready to go, why don't we play that video, and then I'll wrap up afterwards. Did Ian hear me? There we go.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's the 2020 season in a nutshell. Again, a great group of kids. It was a pleasure to watch them succeed. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for their support and for helping us out during the what was a pretty crazy season, but we did make the best of it, and we made lemons out of lemonade. So again, a congratulations to the kids. Some of them were on right now, and some of our coaches are on as well. And again, thank you to the Board of Ed and Dr. Glazier, all those that afford us the opportunity to succeed. Dr. G.
Thank you, Mr. Pyro. That was outstanding. Yep.
Thank you. And you did a wonderful job capturing it. I know that was a lot of work for you. Thank you so very much. And obviously, I know all of the board members, and I can see in the chat, everybody has something they want to say to the team and about the season. Obviously, congratulations. We've been able to share those congratulations, and it's very exciting. I also just want to highlight for a minute, along with the team, our coach, Steve DiGregorio. I know you detailed that he was the Giants, the New York Giants, by the way, coach of the week. He was also the coach of the year for the state. And the work that he was able to put in, I know everybody, it's a short season, but to have an undefeated season in this kind of environment, to be able to practice given all of the various protocols that were required is unimaginable. And to Coach Steve and to the entire coaching team, congratulations to you as well. It is a true team, students and staff. So thank you for that.
Yes, so just to follow up on that, Mr. Power, that was outstanding. Nice presentation. The so many names that you and I know and recognize. I'm sure that I can know how proud their parents are, and their grandparents, and in one case, the great-grandfather. I know would love to be here to see Steve Searle running that ball, playing that game. I congratulate you and the coaches on a great job. I know some of our board members would like to say something, so we'll start right with Mr. Frank DeMeo.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Joe, great job on the presentation as usual. Just want to say, I had the pleasure of watching some of these kids from, when they were in the third grade down with the rec stuff, and getting to watch most of this year. I didn't get to see all of them, but most of the game, every home game I was at, I see it a couple of ways. Congratulations, job well done. You put yourself up there with some of the best of all time, guys. I'm very proud to say I got to see you play from, little kids all the way through. And I look forward to hearing more from some of you coming out of the college football ranks. Congratulations, and we're always here at the Rec if you ever need us.
Hey Charlie, I don't want to interrupt. But we have 170 some people on the call, and I just saw that Steve DiGregorio is joining us, and that his hand is up to speak. So I know we'd love to hear from Steve.
Oh, definitely. Come on ahead, Coach.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank everyone in the Nutley community for all of your unbridled support of our kids and our football program. Yeah, it was a weird year. It sure was. But we never made excuses. The kids never made excuses. They showed up every day. They were resilient as heck. And I am so proud to have coached them and to be associated with them. And I feel the same way about my staff. They were incredible every day of the season. So thank you to the Nutley School community, Dr. Glazer, Mr. Williams, our wonderful Board of Education, Mr. DePisa, Mr. Parisi. Thank you very, very much. Timmy Coster, thank you very much. It was a great team effort, and it was a memorable year, one we will never forget. So thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
And Coach, when you talk about resilience, that's you. And you've set a great example for our children. And I thank you for everything you've going through and dealing with our children, difficult time in Nutley, difficult time in the world. And I appreciate everything you've done for our system, and just keep it up. Someone else would like to speak up? Board members, now's the time.
Mr. President, if I may.
Certainly, of course.
I just want to give a shout out to Coach DiGregorio as well. He's an amazing individual with unparalleled strength. I don't know where he gets it from. I'm sure he gets some of it from the community, but he's a man amongst men. And congratulations to the football team. A lot of great kids, a lot of heart. They really came together as a team this year, and it showed. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Any other board member like to make a comment now? If not, again, we can't thank you enough. Coach DiGregorio, Mr. Pyro, the team, the students, the parents, everyone was in there. It's a difficult year, and you made us proud. You made us proud. There's not much more I can say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you to the board, and good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Good night. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you again, Charlie.
Thanks, Joe.
You did a great job. Thank you. Charlie, I do have one more congratulations to share tonight. If you'd give me just a second, I would like to share with the board and the community that our own director of bands, Mr. Vinny Vicarello, has been selected by Yamaha to its first ever class of 40 under 40. It's their music education advocacy program, and it is to celebrate and recognize outstanding music educators making a difference, growing and strengthening music programs. And I cannot imagine anybody capturing that more than our own Vinny Vicarello. He has made such an impact on our students. It's not just a well-deserved award. It's truly remarkable. If you got to see all of the different nominations, all of the different things submitted by the music boosters, his colleagues, the students, truly a lovely tribute. And as always, making Nutley proud. So congratulations also to Mr. Vicarello.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. I had that on my agenda, but that's fine. As we talked about Coach G. DeGrorio, just like Coach Vicarelli, same way, to bring that enthusiasm forward to the children is just like any one of the sports. Fantastic job, great leader. And if you've been with him on his bus rides, as I've been when they arrive or when they leave, to see the excitement there, the enthusiasm, just like the coach, he loves what he's doing. And it carries down to our children, which is what Nutley and we are all about. So again, thank you very much. Fantastic job. Everyone just keep up the good work. It's a difficult time. We'll get through it. Again, thank you. Any board member like to make a comment? Again, now's the time. Yes, sir.
That's right. I'd like to. Sure. You don't know Mr. V. He's one of the best guys you'll meet, and really a very great guy. I just saw something pop up in the chat about great mentor, teacher. If that doesn't encompass what he is, I don't know what else does. I'm not surprised our music department is winning something else again. So congratulations to all involved, and way to go, Mr. V.
Thank you, Frank. Any other board member like to make a comment? And I know you all feel the same way we feel, and if it's time to say something if you like, but we just can't appreciate the job that our coaches, our staff, our teachers do for us, and our children are lucky to have the mentors that they have. Thank you. Moving on, Dr. Glazer, Superintendent's report.
No,
Okay.
I've got, I'm sorry about that. My superintendent's report is the presentation tonight. So I think if you do your report or David's report and then circle back to me, will be better.
That'd be fine. And I see a lot coming up on chat, and I apologize. It's not easy for me to run the meeting and deal with the chat issues. So I would hope that Eric Gazzaro or someone else, if we, at least a Dan check, see some chat that we need to get on, we can certainly deal with it. I don't want to miss anyone right now. But we'll move on to Mr. DePisa. We'll take your report. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Once again, congratulations to the football team, coaches, and parents on a wonderful, successful season. I would like to thank the board members once again for their hard work during their committees in the month of January. Our budget prep is ongoing, and I should be ready to present to the ad hoc committee by the second week of February, preliminary budget numbers. The auditors are finishing up in the district, and the report will be shortly distributed, and it'll be ready for the CAFRA repository, which is February 5th is the deadline for me to submit the CAFRA into the state. And I'd just like to give a special thank you to the central office administration, including the superintendent's office, because the amount of work we're doing on a daily basis in a short amount of time with the condensed holiday season We're up to date, and I'm proud of each and every one of them. So thank you very much, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. DePisa. And along with what Joe Pyro had to say before, I know we need to send some accolades out to the grounds crew, to the maintenance crew, the people that work those football games or all the games, the basketball, whatever it might be, track, whatever's coming up. That team of yours and Mr. Parisi puts in an inordinate amount of time to make things, nowadays I'll say safe, which is most important, but safe and clean and good for our children. And I want to thank them all the time. Mr. Parigi, have you got time?
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you. The new compressor at the George Washington Middle School has been installed and the final connections are being made. The heat exchanger at Lincoln School gym has been replaced and the system is up and running. The preparation for the concrete pad for the new storage shed at the John Walker Middle School has begun, and the grounds crew has completed the leaf cleanup district-wide. The custodians continue to clean and paint in each building. Tim Coster is securing prices for replacement vehicles for our grounds and maintenance departments. We are finalizing a quotation for replacing the cores and locks throughout the district. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, come on, Mr. Parisi. I know you've done a lot more than that, and your team has done a lot more than that. I was fortunate. Okay, take it back. I was fortunate or unfortunate to visit the high school the other day, and and walk down the corridors, and the color combination is phenomenal. They were painting upper and lower parts of the hallway going down the wing, going towards the cafeteria. Fantastic choice of colors, maroon, obviously, but look great. Your team always works hard, and I just, it was nice to see what's the results. Not so, I know they work all the time, but the results when it starts to come together was fantastic. I can't wait to get the Hall of Fame information back up on the wall. That'll make present members of that Hall of Fame excited, and everything looked good. So I wanted to compliment you on your team again.
Thank you. When they come back to school, they'll notice a big difference. The staff is painting, they are cleaning. We are doing things we weren't able to do for the last 100 years. We've never had this much time to clean and prep. I'm not taking credit for any color combination. I do not pick colors. Dennis Williams and his crew pick the colors, not Mr. Parigi. We just paint. Thank you.
Well, I know appreciate your input. I know you say that, but I know you work with Dennis, and I appreciate the way the schools look. All of them. I was fortunate enough to visit Spring Garden last week. When I say I visit, I went in with my mask. I did the temperature check. I said hello to the principal. Went to Washington. Said hello to the principal. Just. That's me, okay? And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that's me. But the schools look phenomenal. I know the fortunate side of this pandemic is we are getting a lot of work done on our buildings, which is a fantastic thing. If you read the newspaper today or listened to the news today, some other towns are not as lucky, dealing with issues, having to try to come back to school, not being able to do it because of their buildings not being prepared, but that's not our issue.
No.
Okay, Dr. Gliz, you want to try now, or you want to wait longer?
No, I'm fine. I just figured we wouldn't start without hearing from everybody else. And, you know, it's important. You'll hear in the committee reports later all of the work that David is doing with the budget and Michael is doing, not just getting the buildings ready, but getting the thermoscanners in place and making sure that we're able to do the COVID testing and the deep cleaning that's required after there are positives. Charlie, you talked about being in the buildings with your masks and that. We do have staff in the buildings, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our maintenance, grounds, and custodial team has been in since May 11th, every day. And they've done that when they've been having to open and close and quarantine amongst themselves. And they've still gotten that level of work done. So it's really, it's a night of accolades. And I think, you know, you see in the chat about our teams and our students, which is so important, but to also talk about our new business administrator and what he's had to take on, and our new director of buildings and grounds and what he's had to take on. And in all fairness, our new assistant superintendent and new director of curriculum and new employee relations director, everybody has done just a remarkable job. And I thank you all, as long as we're passing out thank yous and accolades. You've been wonderful, everybody. So on that note, Ian, I think you have the tonight's presentation with the data and the return to school. I see we have almost 200 people on the call, so might as well just get started. I cannot see. There you go. Thanks, Ian. All right, so back to school 2021. Again, we met in December. I will just reiterate a couple of topics before we get into the newest data. The most important thing I think to know is that we do not, and by we I mean our Board of Education, our administration, myself, we don't make decisions in a vacuum. We don't work by ourselves. We rely on our state, we rely on the local health partners, we get direction and data from our local and state and county departments of health, from the Department of Education. The information tonight that we're sharing is not only from our local Department of Health, and it is all accurate as of 11 o'clock this morning, but the data is also shared with our county health office, with Commissioner Kelly, with the State Department of Health. We also have been working with Hackensack Meridian Medical Center and our partners there. We are assigned 2 physicians and a whole raft of medical students who work with us, and you'll be meeting them later in the month. We'll be doing some community meetings and Q&A with that part of our team. But everybody works to gather and develop that information. As we have said repeatedly until I'm hoarse, I can even hear it now, everybody wants the students back into school. We are all working to that end. We all are monitoring the same science, the same data, the same articles and reports. Everything that you see, we also see. We feel, we register the impact of the pandemics on our students, on the staff, on ourselves. We're working too, just the same way that you do. And again, everybody is in agreement. We said it in November, we've said it in December. When the COVID-19 activity levels lower considerably in the state, and that is below a level 3 on the activity level, when the transmission rate drops below a 1%, then we can consider opening the schools earlier. And as you'll see tonight, that has not been able to happen. Ian, next slide, please. This is the COVID-19 activity level report from the Communicable Disease Services of the New Jersey Department of Health, week ending January 16th. That is week 2. As you know, as you've heard us report, the report is always from the previous week. You're going to notice that the entire state is and has been orange. It's been at that high level for a long time. Actually, I went back and checked. We've been at that high level starting November 14th, and we were only yellow and moderate prior to November 14th. And we were in school during that time for our pre-K through 6 and all of our special education children. For the state, there is not just one factor that determines this activity level or color. This score is based on a number of things. You can see the columns at the bottom, the case rate. The case rate is how many cases per 100,000, and it's calculated as a proportion of the population. So daily COVID cases for every 100,000 people. And the case rate, like I said, is monitored as a 7-day average. It's the first positive collection data that's collected every week. And currently, we are at red, very high case rate in Nutley, in the northeast part of the state, and for Essex County, all 3. When you look at the CLI, the middle number, right? That is the symptoms. That is people who have COVID-like illnesses, who have been identified through their doctors, through hospitalization, as having those symptoms. And by now, I hope you all know that those symptoms are the cough, the shortness of breath, the difficulty breathing. Perhaps they've actually tested positive for coronavirus, and that shows up in the different diagnosis codes in all of the health offices. Any kind of similar diagnosis, flu, bronchitis, strep throat, all of those are excluded, all right? And that surveillance, again, is done by the Department of Health. It's monitored weekly, and our current level is orange high. The positivity rate is something that we've talked about a lot. That is the percent of total positive COVID cases based on PCR tests, right? Not the rapid test. And the positivity rate is also monitored over a 7-day period. That is also currently orange high. And again, that has not changed since November. And this data is literally reported as of 11 o'clock this morning by our local and county departments of health. Those values together, those three areas, when they are averaged together, they round out. That's what gives us that activity level score. And that's what corresponds then to the state activity level. We are currently orange. The entire state is at that level. And that's what gives us that number of 3. The good news, though, is that the statewide and nationally, the number of cases over the week has declined. The governor reported that today. The statewide rate of COVID transmission, however, has still remained above that number 1. We're currently at a steady 1.12. Please remember, though, that any transmission rate over the number 1 means that we're still expanding. That outbreak is not reducing, it's expanding. In Nutley, we're still above a 10% positivity rate. Again, today that rate is 10.55%. And just to give you an idea of what that means for us. So in preparation for tomorrow's PSATs, we organized COVID-19 testing yesterday, Sunday, for the 101 11th graders who are eligible to take the PSAT. We did test 60 students yesterday. Of those 60 students, 4 were positive. In addition, we test for athletics. We have a baseline and then a testing before their first games. In athletics, we have 5 positive cases. The girls' basketball team and the boys and girls bowling teams are currently quarantined. All their practices and games are now canceled until after February 7th. Beyond that, today, for the Nutley Public Schools, I had almost 150 people in quarantine. Some of those had already tested positive, some are awaiting test results, some are exposed to a person with a confirmed positive. It's a lot of people. And please remember, when you get your Nutley report, staff members that don't live in Nutley, even though it impacts our district, impacts us, those numbers are reported to their hometown health department. So as you can see, we are not yet still at that metric of below a 3 on the activity level or below a 1 of a transmission rate. Ian, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So here's the same chart I've been showing you since August. It's the chart as per the state of New Jersey Department of Health. All of the source data here is from the New Jersey Department of Health. We continue to use them because they've been providing accurate statistical data for years on every single type of communicable disease, long before COVID-19. Therefore, the Nutley Health Department also chooses to follow the Nutley Department of Health's years of expertise, years of statistical reporting, and that's what they use to base their public health response on during the pandemic. I will tell you that I've had many conversations. As I told you, this information shared with the county, with Commissioner Kelly, shared with the Department of Health, shared with the Department of Education. And I'm going to say I am still unclear the reason why Essex County recently chose to use a different color coding system other than what the Department of Health uses. I am not privy to how they gather or calculate their statistics. The same issue of discrepancy between the Department of Health and Essex County reports is best addressed by the county. We have asked for a statement. We've asked for it to be shared. I have not been given an answer why they decided to change to their own system and not use what's happening throughout the state. We committed to using and looking at Nutley data. We committed to working with our local health department, and that's what we've continued to do. And all of our data is based on the local and the county and state departments of health. Ian, next slide, please. Again, we are at the orange activity level. There are specific rules about what to do if teachers or students get sick when we are in that orange level and when we're in schools. There are specific guidance areas for symptoms, and there are specific activities that need to be restricted in that orange area. I'm going to share with you again that those include push in and pull out special education, speech, OTPT, anything done in small groups, our English language learning and small group activities, our strategies in small groups and in-class support. All of those would be impacted if we were not virtual. We would not be able to successfully pass between classes 7 to 12. And again, those closure decisions would be like what's happening in all of our neighboring districts. Open for a day, close 2 days later for 2 weeks, open one school, end up having 4 schools closed in the same week. And that's very, very disruptive to education to be opening and closing that often. I will say that that has finally been recognized at a state level. We've been saying it, other districts have been saying it. At the end of last week, although there was no announcement from the Department of Education, we learned through the press and through some county correspondence that the state has now modified some of its restrictions to allow more schools to open and more schools to stay open, even when the case rate remains at a high level. That just came out. Our team will be reviewing those modified guidelines. We'll be revising our restart and reentry plan to include those changes. I think we are all hopeful that when we do open in the next couple weeks, that we will be able to stay open, except for perhaps isolated classes or isolated programs. Additionally, the federal government last week also announced plans to implement guidelines to open the schools safely. And I'm going to say I am not the only superintendent in the county, in the state, or in the country who is looking forward to a more coordinated effort and appreciates that work. I do want to just reiterate again, we've said this repeatedly, it bears mentioning here again, spread is not happening in our schools. Our buildings are safe, our protocols are solid. It's community spread. It is that community spread that is keeping us at the orange high level, not just in Nutley, but in the county and in the state. And I am going to reiterate some things that we're seeing, some things that are challenging on a daily basis. Families are still not telling the truth on the daily screening form, or when they're questioned by our school nurses. They're sending children to practices, to events, when they know that there's been a positive or they've been exposed to a positive. And we know because of contact tracing. So when we call, your honesty and candor is appreciated. Denying those things or denying travel does not move us forward and does not help us get people out of quarantine. And I recognize that some people are confused. Some people still don't understand that they need to quarantine and stay home, even when they're waiting for test results, when they've had that close contact, when they've had that call that they've had a close contact or a notification. Again, despite repeated messages, communications, please, our school nurses are working double time to try and get this data. At Nutley High School, the 5-day average of students and families not completing the daily electronic questionnaire is 17%. At Spring Garden, the school nurse reported that for the last 5 days, it's been over 30%. These school nurses are trying to help. They're following up, they're calling, they're emailing, we're robocalling. We're trying to consult with you. We need to be able to track symptoms. We need to be able to track positive cases and to be able to track closed cases as well as those symptoms in order for us to be able to provide resources. Our public health officers are working day and night to support us. And if we don't have accurate information, it doesn't help us with all of our efforts. We will be sending yet another communication about completing the daily electronic survey in the coming weeks. We still have people having house parties. We still have gatherings of more than 10 in homes and in restaurants. The governor's executive order is very clear and it's enforceable. I'm going to tell you that we have just today, Monday, 2 more positives and 3 quarantines from a recent party. People are still not wearing their masks fully over their mouth and their nose. It's not enough just to have it around your chin or to pull it up when you come within 6 feet of somebody. We need to be having those masks on, socially distancing. People need to continue to do their hygiene of washing their hands and using hand sanitizer. And very importantly, when you don't feel well, please stay home. Please stay home. We would all help you. Go to the store and pick up soup or water or Gatorade, whatever you need when you're not feeling well. Please, please stay home, not just from practices, but from the stores and from events. Ian, next slide, please. As of today in the governor's report, I will give you the school update. There are 86 schools open for in-person instruction. That is 4 more than what I reported in December, only 4. There are 414 currently offering hybrid instruction. That's up 52 from what I reported in December. 270 are offering all remote learning. That's down from 55 last week and 69 the week before. However, we did get an update about 5:30 saying that there are 19 additional districts who have had to revert to fully remote. So it's a fluid situation there. And there are 41 districts offering a mix of all remote, in-person, or hybrid learning. And again, that's 6 less than the 47 I reported in December. This also doesn't take into consideration that parents do still have the option to choose 100% remote instruction. That option isn't taken away even with a return to school or return to hybrid instruction. Ian, next slide, please. So despite some districts returning, making their return date now after spring break, some districts not coming back until the end of April, with our baseline COVID testing plans and our surveillance testing, with what we hope for as increased vaccinations, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. We are still planning for February 22nd for the return of staff. That is the week after the winter break, so only a few instructional weeks away. And then doing the COVID testing the week of February 15th and 22nd for staff. COVID testing for students prior to them coming into the buildings March 1st. And that March 1st would be pre-K and pre-K to 2, all levels of self-contained special education, grade 7, grade 9 and 10. And then we would continue with that testing for students in grades 3 through 6, grade 8, 11, and 12 for a return on March 8th. That return will be hybrid instruction when we start. And again, as we've committed to, we will grow that over time. The hope for outcome is to be able to go to 5 days a week, half days, but we do need to grow that. Our capacity has not increased over the last year. Our class sizes have not changed. We have to still follow the governor's executive orders on capacity. So with social distancing and that, we do need to start hybrid, but the goal would be to increase that to 5 days a week, at least half days. And again, now that we have a COVID testing protocol, we are able to resume in-person assessment of our special education students. We are going to be surveying families regarding their comfort level with having their children tested for that in-person assessment, as well as for the return to school. And that survey, I believe, is imminent. I'm not sure. I think that we expect it as soon as maybe tomorrow, just so people are aware of that. Ian, next slide, please. This vaccination slide, we did update. Vaccines did start arriving in New Jersey on schedule, and the first ones were administered mid-December. Educators were identified originally as in Tier 1B in that next round of the vaccine. That has not materialized. I will tell you that the Nutley Public Schools has reached out locally to the township and the county, and we will reach out again locally to the county level and to Governor Murphy to make educators a priority for the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. It's our intention to communicate very strongly to all of those entities, particularly Governor Murphy. We are not going to be able to normalize our lives. We are not going to be able to bolster the economy or strengthen our return to school without this kind of action. They need to make a commitment to expedite the vaccine for all school district employees. We want our staff to feel genuinely safe as they return to work. Again, we know that the spread isn't happening amongst our elementary school children. We know that the spread is not happening child to child. We understand that it's adults. We understand that it's that age group of 13 to 17 where they're still getting together, where they're still not social distancing and wearing masks, where that spread's happening. But we still need to give people a comfort level at the place of work. Additionally, there's a lot of stress on all of our districts statewide, trying to keep schools open due to staffing issues. When there's an emergency illness, when somebody goes out on maternity leave early, when somebody is actually ill from COVID-19. We have a number of staffing issues that need to be remediated. We want to make sure that the vaccine is available to everybody who is willing to take it on an immediate timeline to help relieve the pressure valve of some of those issues. That is the last slide in the presentation. Mr. Kaczynski, I don't know if the board members have questions.
First of all, Dr. Glazer, I wanted to thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive report. The letter that we received this morning from Patty Cruz, that was covered. You're not going to bother reading the letter, or?
I was not going to do that, but you are welcome to. You also received it.
No, I think you covered it very well. I think the last part of your presentation was upsetting to me personally, that the governor, and I know we are composing a letter. I see there were a little bit of chat questions about why haven't we made inroads or connections with the administration in Trenton. We are doing that. We are sending a letter to the governor. The board members will see it, and we'll put it out to the governor, explaining our concern that smokers should be put as a priority before teachers. That might upset some of my smoking friends, but too bad. Our teachers, our administration, our staff certainly should be right up there, in my opinion, with the policemen, firemen, nurses, the first line defense. They are our children's first line defense, and I'm offended that the governor would move them to a priority down the list. And we're going to put that in a letter to him. But we'll see what comes out of it. So, we have the concerns. I think you did an outstanding job on the presentation. If I find it necessary to read the letter, I will do that. But we're going to move on right now, unless any board. We'll have more time, I'm sure, in our later part of the presentation, unless board members would like to say something now. If not, we'll go to the part of our, committee reports. Mr. Balsamo, can you give us a report on the administration committee, please?
Yes, Mr. President. The administrative committee met on January 21st. We received an update from Mr. Bania on the postponement of CUSAC. We heard from Dr. Glazer about budget development, the mid-year budget review submission to the county office, an update on COVID testing for winter sports in the PSAT, as Dr. Glazer covered in her report, return to school pathways. We also heard about the Nutley High School mid-year parent survey with regard to remote learning. And as of yet, we don't have a date for our next meeting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Balsamo. And I know I've said it before, but I see we have 202 people on the meeting tonight, which I applaud you for being here, and I thank you for being here. And I wish we had 28,000 people on the meeting. Then we might say that we're speaking to everybody, but I'll take the 202. The board members put in an inordinate amount of time throughout the week, certainly before our board meeting. So last week we were extremely busy at all of our committee meetings. I'm catching up on what's going on throughout the district, thanks to Mrs. Zara now throughout the state, throughout our attorneys. Some of our board meetings, Mrs. Quirk was at a meeting that took 3 hours to discuss some of our policies. We volunteered to do this. I appreciate your time, and I want at least the 204 people that are on there to recognize that you do this. And later on in our meeting, we will recognize the Board of Education in the state of New Jersey, but certainly ours. Mr. Ferrara, can you give us a finance report, please?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. The Finance Committee met on January 21st. Mr. DePisa reported from Mr. Parigi, who was unable to attend that meeting, that the new compressor at the John Walker Middle School was installed and final connections are being made. The heat exchanger at Lincoln School Gym was replaced and is up and running. The preparation for the concrete pad for a new storage shed at the middle school has begun, and the grounds crew has completed the leaf cleanup district-wide. The custodians continue to clean and paint each building. Tim Coster is securing prices for replacement vehicles for the grounds and maintenance departments. And Mr. Parigi is finalizing a quote for replacing door locks, cores, and handles district-wide. Mr. DePisa discussed the resolution for Schenck, Price, Smith, and King. The contract will be from January 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. Mr. DePisa is trying to secure contracts for the beginning and ending in the fiscal year for all vendors when possible. The Yanacol School PTO sent a formal donation letter for an outdoor space at Yanacol School in the amount of $25,000. At tonight's agenda, there will be a motion to accept that donation. We also received a letter from an engineer, Pannoni Associates, verifying construction of a secure entrance on the south end of Yanacol School. Mr. DePisa updated the committee on the budget preparation process thus far and the mid-year budget review, which was submitted to the county office on January 19th. The board received the formal paperwork for the Melissa Centrello Scholarship Foundation, which is doing business as Melissa's Hope, and there's a motion to accept the scholarship on tonight's agenda. The committee discussed the Yanacol School secure entrance proposal from Solutions Architecture and the previous request from DeCara Rabina for the same project. A timeline to have the project bid and completed is set for September of 2021. The committee directed Mr. DePisa to have Solutions Architecture provide a revised schematic of the exterior drawing and bid documents to the entire board for the Yanacol School entrance. A meeting is being scheduled for next week to discuss the logistics for the project from start to finish. Dr. Glazer discussed the testing protocol for staff and students for sports and PSAT. This testing is being provided by Bergen Newbridge Medical Center, and the contract is being reviewed by council and is on tonight's agenda. Dr. Glazer discussed reopening for staff and students. Our next meeting is set for February 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrara. And I just want to back up a little bit. When I made a comment about committee members, I certainly emphasize one person, but for what it's worth, at every committee meeting, there are 3 or 4 board members there. So even though I said Mrs. Quirk was there for 3 hours, there were 3 other board members with her, or 2 other board members with her for 3 hours. I'm sorry that I did that. I don't want to slight anybody, but we all put, and like someone said in a comment, we chose to do this. You're absolutely right. We chose to do this for your children. Lisa Danchuk, can you give us an academic report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. The academic committee met on January 15th. Mr. Banya updated the academic committee with the impact of the executive order to postpone CUSAC county review for districts. As a result of us being a high-performing district, our next CUSAC visit will be 2023-2024. Mr. Banya and Ms. Loconsolo updated the academic committee with the progress of the IXL pilot. The district is moving through a process that evaluates this tool that assesses students, provides adaptive skill, recommendations, and problems, and provides data for teachers and families on student progress. 26 teachers as well as 722 students are involved in the pilot. Ms. Loconsolo discussed the January 15th Professional Development Day. This day included a presentation to teachers, paraprofessionals, and related staff concerning the social and emotional impacts of remote learning. Mr. Banya and Ms. Loconsolo broadly discussed support structures that the district is considering for students when they return to school. Mr. Banya and Ms. Loconsolo shared the most recent NJDOE broadcast as relevant to the academic committee. Mr. Banya discussed the purpose of the next District Evaluation Advisory Committee on February 2nd, including an updated observations and discussions of NJDOE SGO guidance. Dr. Glazer shared the results of the mid-year parent review survey that was distributed through Nutley High School. Dr. Glazer updated the committee to the logistics and procedures for COVID testing for PSAT, athletics, and other groups, and the committee reviewed field trips, PD trips, and legal concerns. Our next committee meeting is scheduled for February 17th. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Danchuk. Mrs. Quirk, can we have an update on policy, please?
Yes, the policy committee met virtually on January 20th. The committee updated and reviewed policies from first reading on 12/21/20 BOE agenda for second reading on tonight's agenda. The following policies were reviewed and discussed for first reading on tonight's agenda: 6150 tuition income, 6471 school district travel, 8130 school organization, R8140 enrollment accounting, 8310 public records. The committee discussed moving the policy committee to the week before the academic committee to provide additional time for discussion and review. The next meeting of the policy committee will be Wednesday, February 10th at 5:30. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Quirk. Mrs. Zarrow, update on the legal committee, please.
So there's no update. The only update
I'm sorry, you're right. Sorry.
the only update is there is a new committee. It's the Legal and Legislation Committee that we'll be introducing tonight that I'll be chairing. I am very excited and eager to.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you can always find something to say. Thank you. We now come to the portion of our meeting where we allow members of the public to address the board. In this section, I'm sorry.
Mr. President, Mr. Carter said a few words with regard to the Yanakaw School entrance, and also that was discussed in long range, as well as the outdoor classroom.
No problem. I thought he was going to do that on the when the resolution came up.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay, Mr. Carnicello?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to just talk a little bit briefly about it during the discussion portion of the resolutions.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right,
okay.
Thank you.
Not a problem. We now come to the portion of our meeting where we allow members of the public to address the board. In this section, we allow questions or comments on resolutions only. Our board regulation 0167 allows 20 minutes for these communications. Each person shall be limited to 3 minutes. We ask you to try to stay within that requirement. Specifically, you will be required to stay within that 3 minutes until everybody has a chance to speak. Speakers may speak more than once only after all others wishing to speak at a topic have been heard. All statements will be directed to me as the chairperson. No one may address board members individually. Please be reminded that if your statement is too lengthy, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, or redundant, your participation may be terminated. Please remember to state your name and address each and every time you address the board. Does anyone have any questions now on resolution items only? Thank you. Mrs. Danchek, will you take academic resolution? I'm sorry. On resolution items? Ian, are they on yes, hello.
I don't know. Go through each one by name and.
Okay, if they're not on resolution items, we'll move into later on in the meeting, but I'll take the first person now.
Just in order of showing up on my screen, Ruby Petit Brenner.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jarubi. I live in 112 Pershing in Nutley. And I'm just a little confused if Dr. Glazer can go through the testing requirements again. I think that was raised a few times. And I know I've spoken in past meetings before, and my apologies, but I think I need better clarity again on this percentage because Nutley was yellow or green most of the summer. We still were not able to start on time. So it just seems to be flip-flopping with the percentage of either cases. Like I said, maybe I'm confused and not following, but it seems to change depending on the story of the night when our kids are able to get back to school. And we can go back to August when, again, just wasn't safe. So what is the percentage exactly that we're aiming for? And if you can also discuss a bit more on the testing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petit first. Do you want to deal with that now, Dr. Glazer, or when we open up to the rest? I don't want to start.
There's not a resolution for the return to school this time. So you would either wait, right? You would wait till the public comment, not on the agenda.
And in all due respect, Mrs. Petit, if you don't mind, we have a spot later on where we'll take all questions. I just like to deal with the resolutions now and move through them. Then we can spend as much time as you like talking about your question later on, if you don't mind.
That's no problem.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to talk about resolution items only?
We do have traditional people hands up. Mike Giannone. Mike Giannone, if you have a question about resolutions.
Yeah, no, I'll wait to the public part. I didn't realize this was for resolutions only, so I'll wait till the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Aubrey Alvarez, if you have a question on resolutions.
Yes, hi, sorry, that's under my daughter's name. My name is Kristen Alvarez. I had a question about, I did hear Dr. Glazer say that the testing would start up. Is it when school's starting up for the testing? Is it for the month of March, or will they start testing their students sooner than that? Because my daughter has gone the 90 days and she still hasn't been tested because of the closures.
And again, I appreciate your question. What we're trying to do now is just move this through this part of the meeting. We will be able to answer your questions shortly as soon as we get through the resolution items, if you don't mind.
Okay, maybe I missed that, sorry.
That's no problem, thank you. Ian.
No additional questions at this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Danchek Martin, will you take academics, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move academic resolutions 1 and 2 as written.
Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Balsamo?
Yes.
Mr. Carnicello?
Yes.
Mrs. Danchek Martin?
Yes.
Mr. DeMaio?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk?
Yes.
Mr. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. Zarrow?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes. Mr. Balsamo, will you take administration, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move administration resolutions 1 and 2 as written.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Balsamo,
Yes.
Mr. Carnasella,
Yes.
Mrs. Dancheck Morton,
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo,
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro,
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk,
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
Yes.
Ms. Zarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes. Mr. Ferraro, will you take finance, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I move finance resolutions 1 through 14 as written.
Second.
I'm sorry, discussion, Mr. Balsamo?
Yeah. Hi, Mr. President. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to speak about Finance Resolution 14. Many of you might know Melissa Centrella was a very dear and close friend of mine since we first met in second grade at Radcliffe School. She's also a 1996 graduate of Nutley High School. Melissa spent most of her life suffering from dystonia with one of the most complicated cases on record. From age 14 until she passed away, she spent nearly all of her time in bed with muscle cramps and spasms in nearly every major muscle group in her body. Throughout it all, Melissa was a loving and caring person you could ever imagine. Always worried about others and never feeling sorry for herself, Melissa was a guiding light and example to all who knew her. After Melissa's passing in 2002, under the leadership of her mother, Claire, a group of friends and family came together to start the Melissa Ann Centrella Scholarship in her honor to keep her name and memory alive. Over the last 18 years, we have been able to raise and award more than $200,000 in scholarships for students from Nutley and around New Jersey who are pursuing a career in any medical field. Now we've reached a point in fundraising where we can move that money to the care of the Nutley Board of Education and ensure that that scholarship will honor her memory and legacy for many, many more years to come. I want to thank my fellow board members, Dr. Glazer and Mr. DePisa, for making this agreement possible to honor deserving Nutley High School students and for Melissa's name and legacy to live on for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balsamo, and your group for a great job you're doing there. You know, it's can never do enough, but thank you very much. Mr. Carnasella.
Yes, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit further on the work that we've done in long-range facilities as well as finance. The Yanaqua school projects, which we have two that are going to be starting hopefully by the end of this school year and be finished for the start of the 2021 school year in September. We're working on the secure entrance, which was discussed in the notes for finance. And our goal is to finally, you know, we were dealing with this with pre-COVID with all of our security updates. We were able to secure some grant money. And it looks like we'll be able to finally address the secure entrance at Yanaqua School. That is the number 6 school remaining that needed a secure entrance. We still have one left, which is the middle school, which, you know, hopefully we'll be able to resolve that. And the other portion of this, which is the donation from the PTO, this is something that started about a year ago. It's finally coming to fruition where we're going to be able to hopefully create a outdoor classroom area on the backside of Yanaqua School. So we're looking forward to the work that we're going to be doing there. The board tonight will be approving those funds to come along over to us for us to be able to facilitate the work that needs to be done through the buildings and grounds. So hopefully we'll be able to take care of and resolve those two items over at Yanaqua School with the expectation that both will be complete by September of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Carnasella. And another committee that puts an inordinate amount of time in there, the finance and the long-range facility. I appreciate the work you do. It's complicated sometimes to be a board member when you can't be more than 4 at a meeting, so we have to catch up outside the meeting sometimes. I appreciate the work your team is doing, and certainly Yanaqua School and the PTO and what they've done to raise that money over there is phenomenal. And I know when we get to the secure entrance, safety-wise for our children is going to be fantastic, but the appearance of that secure entrance and the outside classroom is going to be phenomenal. Thank you again. Mr. DePisa.
Mr. President, I'd like Mr. Ferrara to reframe the motion to 1 to 13 and then 14 by itself, because Mr. Balsamo needs to abstain from number 14.
Mr. Ferrara, did you hear that?
I did. Is there a reason why Mr. Balsamo just can't abstain to number 14?
Yeah, that's
Sure, that's fine. As long as it's on the record, it doesn't matter. That's fine.
Leave it the way it is, and he can abstain to 14 as we've done in the past, if you don't mind.
That's fine. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not a problem. That we had the discussion. Now I need the roll call.
Mr. Balsamo.
On resolutions 1 through 13, yes. On 14, abstain.
Thank you. Mr. Carnasella.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Dancheck Martin.
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk.
Yes.
Mr. Riley.
Yes.
Ms. Zarrow.
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes. And someone out of the 191 people that are still here has their microphone on, and I'm hearing a conversation with your better half. Check your mic, please. Thank you. Mrs. Zarrow, will you take legal and legislation, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move legal legislation and legal resolution 1 for the first time, as stated. Thank you.
Second.
Whereas the New Jersey School, I'm sorry, I'm okay.
That's fine. That's fine. We're good. You're going to read the second resolution.
Okay. Whereas the New Jersey School Boards Association has declared January 2021 to be School Board Recognition Month, a time when all residents can acknowledge the contributions made by our local school board members. And whereas the Nutley Board of Education is one of 580 local school boards in New Jersey, which sets policy, oversees operations for the public school district. And whereas the Nutley Board of Education embraces the goal of high-quality education for all New Jersey public school students. And whereas New Jersey's local school boards help determine the educational goals for approximately 1.4 million children in pre-K through 12th grade. And whereas New Jersey's 5,000 local school board members who receive no remuneration for their services act as advocates for the public school students as they work with their administrators, teachers, and parents for the betterment of public education. And Sal, please take it from here.
And whereas school boards strive to provide the resources necessary to meet the needs of all students, including those with special needs, and whereas boards of education provide accountability to the public, they communicate the needs of the school district to the public, and they convey to the school administrators the public's expectations for the schools. And whereas New Jersey can take pride in its schools, which rank among the nation's best in key achievement indicators, such as the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores and the preparation for college through advanced placement offerings and SAT assessments. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Nutley Board of Education does hereby recognize the services of local school board members throughout New Jersey as we join community statewide in observing January 2021 as School Board Recognition Month, and be it further resolved that the Nutley Board of Education urges all New Jersey citizens to work with their local school boards of education and public school staffs toward the advancement of our children's education.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Discussion on this particular resolution?
I would just say thank you to all of you. As somebody who works at the will of the board, I certainly appreciate all of your time, your effort, your energy, your enthusiasm for this work. It never can be recognized enough, not just in January, but all the time. Thank you, truly.
100%. I feel the same way. And my children and my grandchildren thank you. And I'm sure the citizens of Nutley, even though some of the Facebook comments might not say that, I think they appreciate what we do, what you do, and it's a job well done by all Board of Education throughout the state of New Jersey. Thank you. Roll call, Mr. DePisa. Unless someone else would like to say something. Roll call, Mr. DePisa.
Mr. Balsamo.
Yes.
Mr. Carnasella.
Yes.
Mrs. Dancheck Martin.
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro,
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk,
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
Yes.
Ms. Zarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes. Mrs. Quirk, will you take policy resolution, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I move policy resolution 1 and 2 is written.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Balsamo,
Yes.
Mr. Carnasella,
Yes.
Mrs. Dancheck Morton,
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo,
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro,
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk,
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
Yes.
Ms. Zarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Riley, did I miss personnel? Yes, I did. Mr. Riley, will you take personnel, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move personnel resolution is listed. I so move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Balsamo,
Yes.
Mr. Carnasella,
Yes.
Mrs. Dancheck Morton,
Yes.
Mr. DeMayo,
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro,
Yes.
Mrs. Quirk,
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
Yes.
Ms. Zarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. In this section, we allow questions or comments on all school-related matters. Our regulations allow 30 minutes for these communications. Again, each person shall be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask you to try to stay within that requirement. Speakers may speak more than once only after all others wishing to speak on a topic have been heard. As I stated earlier, all statements will be directed to me as the chairperson. No one may address board members individually. Please be reminded that if your statement is too lengthy, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, or redundant, your participation may be terminated. Please remember to state your name and address each and every time you address the board. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Now we'll go back to Mrs. I don't have her name in front of me again.
I think it was.
Yes, Petite Frere. Thank you.
Yes.
No, we need everybody else to mute. Good, thank you. So, to your first question. We did prepare to open, as you remember, in August. We went through all of our various task forces. We had 4 different topics. We created our whole restart and recovery plan to come back for both general ed and special education. And then the governor created a 44-point checklist. We needed to complete every item on that 44-point checklist to be able to return to instruction in person in some capacity. And there were 3 areas that we could not meet on that checklist. And that is why we did not come back for the beginning in September. We were able to do our special education testing. We were able to get past the high heat index. We were able to get past the ventilation issues to be able to open on our phased-in schedule in October. As you know, in November 9th, and I did talk about the numbers changing November 14th, we had a board meeting. And at that board meeting, it was determined that due to the high case rate, the high transmission rate, the activity level, that we would continue with the students that were in school up until the Thanksgiving break and continue virtually with our children in grades 7 to 12. At the December board meeting, the board did announce that they would be bringing students back to school following the winter break and an opportunity for staff to come back into the buildings. They committed to looking at that data in the interim between our return from winter break and this meeting, which I hope my presentation shows you that they've done in depth with any number of medical advisors. Please remember that none of us are epidemiologists or physicians. We take our advice from experts. And that's where we're at. We are still planning to open on those dates as announced in December. There is no change to that plan.
Thank you. Can you review the vaccine requirement? I'm sorry, the testing requirement again?
Sure. So just since you brought it up, and I did see a couple of questions. Thank you for all of the chats. I can't look at them and be on the camera. So for those of you that have emailed or texted, vaccinations are not a requirement for anybody, not any student, not any staff member, just to be clear. Vaccines are a choice. Nobody is making you or your child or a teacher receive a vaccine. They are available, however, and because they're available and because they are currently deemed at 95% effective, the only other vaccine that has that level of effectiveness rate is the measles vaccine, I'm told. The idea would be to get the governor to be able to release those vaccines to educators as quickly as possible. There are a number of districts that have returned prior to their staff being vaccinated. And I believe that all of us are going to bond together to petition Trenton, to petition those that release the vaccine to make sure that they are available to educators. So that's just, since you said vaccine first, I figured I'd hit that first. As far as the COVID testing, the NJSIA, which is the High School Scholastic Sports Association, that does give the guidance for sports in New Jersey, worked with Governor Murphy, and over the break, actually Christmas Eve day, announced a change to the winter sports guidelines. We originally were told that winter sports would be put off until February, and yet with less than a week's notice, hockey was able to have outdoor practices and to be able to start their scrimmages, and girls and boys basketball, as well as bowling, were able to go back by January 11th. We have been out of school. We haven't had students come together. We haven't had any capacity for anything but what's being reported by our public health department. And the decision was made to do COVID testing prior to the first practice and first game for our winter athletes to try and keep that spread, that community spread and positivity number down. For the winter sports, we tested 80 students 2 weeks ago. On January 11th, there was one positive. We tested yesterday. We wanted to be able to do the PSAT. The PSAT is a requirement for National Merit Scholars. Our 11th grade students are eligible for that. Many districts have missed all of the testing windows being closed. Tomorrow is the last testing window for this school year. We felt that it was very important for our students to be able to have that opportunity. I will credit Mr. Williams, Mr. Banya, Ms. DeVore, Mr. Materia, Persis Avilas, our testing coordinator, for marshaling proctors, people who were willing to come in to individual classrooms, 10 people in a room, to be able to give this test in person to our students. And to be able to facilitate that, we did test the students yesterday. There are 101 eligible students. 60 were COVID tested at Nutley High School. There were 4 positives in that group. In addition, prior to the girls' basketball first game, they were to be tested Thursday. Unfortunately, a number of positives arose and they are quarantined. Through the PSAT testing, we also tested boys and girls bowling and boys basketball prior to what would be their first game tomorrow. There were positives among those groups. We have 5 in our athletic area that tested positive that needed to quarantine. The boys basketball game has actually been postponed at the request of the other team. It was going to be in our gym. Obviously, even with deep cleaning, that does need to sit for 24 to 48 hours. And rather than cancel, they opted to postpone. So we have partnered with a testing agency, as I started talking about in November. We looked at the Union County Mobile Unit. We looked at some private physicians' offices who have done some smaller scale community testing in various communities. And we were recommended a testing organization by one of our community members. And this group does colleges, private schools. They had already had a lot of experience with our age group and population. And we partnered with them to do that initial winter sports COVID testing and our testing on Sunday. We are using PCR tests. Those tests do take sometimes 2 days to get the results. They are part of the Rutgers Medical Center and the team at Rutgers University who is working on COVID testing. I did see before I had to snap out of the chat because I can't see you and them, a couple people asking why other districts aren't doing this. And I will tell you, we made the decision. I'm really pleased that we've made that decision to do baseline testing, and then it'll be random surveillance testing going forward as it's necessary. We've had 3 districts come and observe the first testing process. We've had 4 districts come and observe the next process. And that's where we're at. We're, I guess, in this case, for you think that we're lagging behind in return, but we're actually ahead. And I will say that it's been a really solid process. The testing a letter goes out with the online portal, the parent portal. The testing organization sends that in, and the parents register their child. The child comes for the testing, and the results are reported through that portal. Again, they don't come to us. The positives that were the result of this testing, the parents were notified by the testing administrator. We weren't notified until public health. So I think that answers that question.
Thank you, Dr. Glazer. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. And to go on a little bit, because I know Dr. Glazer and I have received quite a few calls, there was some question about testing our teachers and students before they come back. Are the parents going to be able to be there with their students when they are tested? Yes, they will be able to accompany their student when they're tested. The type of testing that we're going to do, from what I understand right now, is going to be the nose swab. Correct, Dr. Glazer?
Yes.
That's where we're at right now.
But before, thank you. But before we go down that road, it is a very complicated process to schedule 5,000 people to get those results back, to be able to quarantine people and to get people into the schools. Again, we are using a testing administrator. This isn't something the district does, the public health office does. It's not something our school nurses do. It is something that is administered and is being done by an agency that are medical professionals. I'm not sure that at this early stage I can answer all your questions about testing. What was asked was very specific, so it was easier to answer.
Yes, and I appreciate that, and I was just starting the conversation. I'm sure, as you had mentioned before, it's a fluid motion, so things are changing day to day, and we will keep the parents informed as we move forward. But right now, our agenda is, as we mentioned, March 1st opening, start testing on February 22nd, and moving from there. I guess we'll take another question. It was mentioned to me that if you could raise your hand, you'll be recognized by Ian V. Meister, who will take your question. So if you have a question, it's easier to raise your hand rather than going on a chat line, from what I understand.
Yes, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Kirsten, you had a question from earlier?
Yes, hi. I have 2 questions. First question is, I heard Dr. Glazer mention the kids who needed to be tested would soon be tested. Is that starting this week, or is it starting back when school starts in March?
So that's what the survey is, actually. So the child study team would be tested, and then on a daily basis, those students that are scheduled for in-person assessments would be tested, again, through the agency. They would have a block of time each day. It would be 2 days before the in-person assessment. And then obviously the child would be able to come for their in-person testing. I will say that the reason that we're surveying is because that decision to test before we come back to school comes for some students that's 2 tests. And for some families, they might want to make the choice to wait to have their assessment until we return in March. So there is only 1 test. The special ed parents have been an amazing resource. Mrs. Doyle Marino, April Vitiello, the advisory committee have really given us a tremendous insight, honestly, into what's happening in some of the out-of-district placements and some of the other districts. And the nasal swab was actually determined to be the best choice, even for little kids and special education students. The other tests were deemed too difficult. The one that's a throat test is like a strep test. That was really challenging for students who felt like they were gagging. The saliva test was challenging, especially for small children and special education children. So as Mr. Kaczynski mentioned, the nasal swab test was identified. If done well, and I've had it done, I feel like at least 12 times, it is not painful. You know it's happening, but it's not painful. All of the students, almost 200 students that we've tested in the last 2 weeks, some who were nervous about it, some who had heard it hurt, we asked all of them. It was not a challenge for them. So we do want to make sure, though, that we are surveying. We don't want to make that requirement if it's going to be a challenge for those special education students.
Thank you, Dr. Glazer. Did that help, Mrs. Alvarez?
Sort of. So I have my second question, but for the testing, am I able to have my daughter tested with her pediatrician? Because this has been something that's been ongoing since before December, and her teachers are working around the clock to help her out. And I just feel that us waiting and holding off on this testing is really pushing the lines. And then my second question is about the reopening of schools. I know that kindergarten through 2nd grade will be going back, but I've noticed that when we add the older kids with the smaller kids, the exposure rate is higher. So I was wondering if you guys are working on like a drop-off system or a staggered scheduling system to allow the kids to have less exposure as they're waiting to go into school.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. We'll get an answer and then we'll move on to someone else if that's okay. Thank you.
So we have allowed students to be tested with a different testing administrator, whether it's their pediatrician. We have a number of parents that work in the healthcare field and had access for their child to be tested elsewhere. It does need to be a PCR test, and the results need to be provided prior to any in-person testing. That's been our protocol so far. So I hope that answers the first part of your question.
Yes.
As far as, again, the reason we're surveying is more, we don't want to put everybody through that scheduling, testing, disrupting to come back early, and then it's not something that most parents want to do. So I understand that it's important for your family, and I hope you'll answer that way when you receive the survey from the special education department. As far as the actual return in March and the schedule and all of those things, Mrs. Loconsolo, the principals, Mr. Bania, these are ongoing conversations. There has been, just even in the last couple weeks, the changes in indoor capacity, a number of things we have to work on. We have added thermoscanners at each building. Even the calibration of those are things that we have to work on. So we are grateful to be able to have our team available. I don't know if Mr. Bania or Mrs. Loconsolo want to add anything additional.
I would just ask Doc that we're constantly getting information and doing our best to stagger students where possible, working with principals where possible, and work through, what's going to happen in March with the weather and all of the factors that are going to be upon us. So we're working hard to figure this out now.
Yeah, similarly, I know when we earlier in the fall had some students back, we worked with principals to stagger doors they were using and entrances and things like that. And we're looking at doing the same thing there to minimize contact as much as possible.
And
all of the things that were in the plan previously are still in that plan.
And all of our parents that are on board tonight should realize, and I know we've said it, but there's going to be extenuating circumstances for every child. We will work with you as best we can. I see some parents that are talking about, being pregnant, not wanting to be out, having the pediatrician test them. We're one of you. We're going to do whatever is the easiest, safest way to bring your children back. We are here to do that for you. So don't feel as if, there's no special circumstance. Every one of you are special. We will make it work for your child and you and our teachers as best we can. I'll take another question, Mr. Viemeister.
Hi, Frank Contursa.
How you doing? This is Frank Conturso, 265 High Street. First, I want to thank you all. I know this is a lot of work you guys are putting into coordinating going back to school and getting the kids back in school. And I know I'm going to speak from my own personal experience. We have children at home who are their psychological and emotional status is definitely they're being pressured. Basically, they're being tested. They're psychologically and emotionally, and they're struggling with the setup as it is now. So we're very eager to get our kids back to school. I have concern about the PCR test. It's known to be unreliable. The World Health Organization just came out and acknowledged that they've been running at really high cycle amplification cycles, which ends up getting a lot of false positives in the results. So I don't understand the testing of asymptomatic or students that don't have symptoms to begin with. I have a hard time with the students, especially our children. I know our children are not the only ones going through this, already with very high levels of anxiety and stress, then going to school and having to get tested for something they already, frankly, I don't think they need to be aware of. It's not, I want the children to be children and go back to school. And you acknowledge that the spread is not happening in the schools. So I'm trying to understand what the reasoning is for for everyone to get tested when other districts are not doing this. And if they're asymptomatic, what's the point?
Dr. Glazer.
So first of all, please know I am not a medical professional, right? I am not an expert. I am parroting what I'm saying to you from our partners in the health department, from our medical professionals. We have 2 district physicians, as well as our partners at Hackensack Meridian Medical Center. And the PCR test, we are told, is absolutely more accurate than the rapid test, and that it is the rapid test that is not accurate, that needs to be redone in 3 to 5 days. And if we test in advance, this 2 to 3 days in advance, and have the PCR test results done in the lab, which is what we're doing, it's the Rutgers University lab, then we do have that opportunity to capture those positives. The spread is not happening in school, and that's why the recommendation is for this baseline testing. It's mostly people that are asymptomatic that are spreading it, not people that have symptoms. So again, the idea is that if you have a baseline test, you'll have a better opportunity to be able to stay in school. Many of our fellow districts have opened, closed 2 days later, have closed, opened and closed a number of times, and we're looking to try as best as we can to mitigate that. And again, please know I am not a medical professional, so you can ask me deeper, but I'm not sure how much more information I have on that. As far as the other pieces of it, children are going to come back to school and know it's not normal. They are going to be lined up in their masks, socially distanced. They're going to be passing in hallways, single hallways and single stairwells, and maybe going in and out of doors differently than usual. They'll be sitting in classrooms, socially distanced, not able to get up from their chair, not able to take off their mask, having, you know, food and drink or mask breaks outdoors, activities outdoors, not sharing materials or supplies or resources. They're going to be well aware things are different. And I think if we're going to build social emotional health and resiliency, and we've spent a lot of time working with our staff on that, and our counseling department has spent a tremendous amount of time doing programming on that. We need to be authentic with our students and with our staff.
Thank you. Mr. Contorso, yes.
Would the medical professionals you're relying on for your information, can they provide the data or the studies that support this approach? I'd like to have that available to the parents.
Thank you for saying that. I did say during my presentation that our Hackensack Medical Center partners and our district physicians are planning 2 sessions. I'm not sure of the exact dates. I think it'll be that first week after winter break when the staff comes back. They'll do it at several different times. And we'll have the opportunity to hear from them, their recommendations, as well as an opportunity for questions and answers. So thank you for bringing that up again, because I did say it, but I don't have the date yet.
All right, I missed that and I apologize for that. I'd still, just to jump off of that, I hope that they can provide their literature, whatever they're going off of, to the parents in advance, so at least we can come prepared to ask questions as opposed to having to disseminate any medical information or studies on the spot.
Oh, no, they are used to doing these. We had one a couple weeks ago with the township on the vaccine, and there will be an opportunity to submit questions in advance, an opportunity for the epidemiologists to be able to access that science and data for you in advance.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gatoso. Ian, I will take another question, please.
Yes, Mike Giano.
Yeah, hi, Mike Canoni, 211 Saddle-Eighth Avenue. Just a quick question up front, and I got a couple other things, Dr. Glazer, but you just mentioned that asymptomatics are a driver of spread, but that's not true according to the CDC and the WHO, and both of those organizations recommend not testing asymptomatic people. So I'm having a very hard time trying to understand why we would require the testing of asymptomatic children. If you could answer that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Well, again, I can only share with you that the recommendation is that baseline testing is a strategy to keep us in school, and we all want our children to be in school. You've heard me say that it's not after we're in school, it's the community spread. It's what you bring into the school. So that is the strategy. And again, I'm taking that recommendation. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not able to answer you, but I will absolutely pass that on to our medical partners as something that they'll need to address.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, do you have something else, or would you like to wait and come back?
I can continue if you don't mind.
Okay, for a little while.
Sure. I'm sure the board and Dr. Glazer and the staff are aware of me and the studies I've shared with you. I've shared numerous studies from credentialed organizations, British Journal of Medicine, New England Journal of Medicine, that make a very strong case that schools are not a vector of transmission, which I think has been acknowledged during this meeting tonight. I also shared with you that the director of infectious disease at the CDC, Dr. Nancy Messonnier, wrote a letter to her local Board of Education saying that they need to provide in-person instructions for their students. So I don't think you get any more credentialed than that in terms of recommending and emphasizing how important in-person schooling is. But some of the other things that I've shared in those studies as well is not only are children not learning at the rate that they should be, but as Frank Contorso just mentioned, that the kids are suffering a great deal in this current situation. And I hope people were able to take a look at the New York Times article on January 24th. It just came out this weekend, which quoted the Clark County, Nevada superintendent, and I'll state that here. When we started to see the uptick in children taking their lives, we knew it wasn't just COVID numbers we needed to look at anymore, said Jesus Jara, the Clark County superintendent. We have to find a way to put our hands on our kids, to see them, to look at them.
Respond, bud.
They've got to start seeing some movement, some hope. In short, the kids are not all right. I cannot fathom a more glaring and terrifying warning sign than what we're hearing about kids committing suicide across this country based on all remote learning. I think what this makes clear, at least to me, I hope to more people, that teachers teaching in person are essential workers. We would never hold institutions such as the police department or ShopRite if any of those individual workers were, God forbid, became very ill from COVID. We wouldn't sit there with our arms folded saying, how dare you? We certainly wouldn't do that to the Board of Ed, God forbid, if a teacher or student got sick. So we need to remove that and absolve ourselves from that line of thinking. I don't think that makes sense. Teachers need to teach kids, and kids need their teachers. They are essential workers.
Mr. Gioli, if you don't mind, okay? And I appreciate your input. I've read all your articles. I've read more. I've read more articles than I ever thought I would about this, and I appreciate your input. We are trying the best we can. We want our children back also. We just want them back safe. So if you don't mind, I don't mind coming back to you, but I have a lot of people that would like to talk, and I'd like to move on to somebody else and come back to you if you have more to say.
Okay, I'll come back.
I do want to say the children are coming back to school. They are coming back to school in a matter of weeks. And when you talk about giving them hope, you can give them a specific date. There is not an indeterminate time or date. There is not anything unspecified. You know what grades, you know what days they're coming back. So I do want to make sure that's clear. We've worked really hard to make this happen. There again, there's lots of conversation about pushing that date out. We're not having that conversation.
Thank you, Doctor. Ian, I'll take another question, please.
Yes, Dana Marchion.
Yes, hi, this is Carlo Maltrone, 230 Reland Ave. So I had a few things. First of all, again, I want to congratulate the football team and all they've done. And I think that's tremendous. And that just goes to show, these kids were given the opportunity to play in this environment and they succeeded. And I think the students need the opportunity to go back to school so they can succeed. The benefits of them being back far outweigh the need for the testing. So, I think, just that example alone shows that these kids, the kids are resilient and they can still succeed in this environment, but we need to give them the opportunity to.
And I'm sure we agree with you. The date we're looking at now to bring our children back safely is March the 1st. And I'm sure you also realize in between now and March the 1st, there's a February break. There are people in our district, teachers, staff, parents that are going on vacation. Like it or not, people are traveling. they're going to Florida. They made reservations to certain areas. So that week in February is right after that, they're going to come back, they're going to be tested, and we're starting school, hopefully, as long as the numbers stay where they're at. And I see some chats, which are hard to look at, but I see some chats about us changing our mind again. We have not changed our mind. This date is there. We are safely coming back on March the 1st.
Okay, so in addition, so Governor Murphy just lowered the restrictions for schools, and you know, despite this, you're still enforcing this test on students, and the problem isn't. I think many parents, the problem isn't that you want to test the kids; it's the method of testing. This swab is not comfortable. You know, you say you got it before, and it was fine. You're an adult. These are little kids that are just dying to go back to school, and you're saying, before you go back to school, we have to stick this swab up your nose. And not that I don't think that doing the swab once and testing them once, that doesn't solve anything, because and to my next question is, do you plan on continuing to test these students? Because I mean, that's not something that, you know, parents don't want this done once, apart from the fact that it's you know, the data shows that it's not reliable. You're saying the PCR is the most reliable, but it's still not 100% reliable. And, you know, just testing them once, sending them back, and washing your hands of it, that doesn't do anything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not that I want increased frequency. I want you to tell us that you're not planning on trying to test these kids more than once.
Thank you. Dr. Glazer.
I can't tell you that because the process includes random surveillance testing. After that, one and done doesn't solve your problem. And again, I want to be clear that we all want the children to come back to school. It's not about—
you keep putting extra hurdles. You're putting extra hurdles.
Easy. Let her finish her conversation, please.
This has been the conversation since November. It is not an extra hurdle. There's nothing, as Mr. Kaczynski said, there's nothing that's changed. I will say to you that, again, we're here for the kids. I'm not sure that you know that when we're in the buildings without kids, it makes the job a lot less meaningful. You have a lot less passion for the work you're doing. We all, there's not one person on this screen, whether it's the board members, the staff members, the community members that are not here because of children. We're not trying to put in additional hurdles or to keep students out. But we also want to make sure that once we're in, we stay in, because we hear from every other district that we work with, not just in New Jersey, across the country, how disruptive it is, open, closed, etc.
Thank you, Doctor.
I'm a teacher myself, and you know, I understand that it's without the kids there, it's not the same job. And I'm sure, you know, I know that the Nutley teachers are working really hard. My girl, you know, have Mrs. Smith, and she's working really hard. And you know, my hat's off to them as well. And I'm sure that they'd rather have the kids there as well. You know, again, if you could at least, at minimum, if you could at least allow the kids to do the saliva test instead of the nose swab, I think that would make a lot of parents more comfortable with allowing, with accepting this and moving forward, and not get as much pushback.
Again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm taking recommendations, so I will share that recommendation. And again, when we have the actual medical professionals come, I'll make sure that that's one of the questions and comments. I do think that everything always bears revisiting. I don't think that there's anything that is set in stone as far as that goes. So thank you.
Okay.
No, I think, time out. And I'm going to say your name is Marcion. If you give us a minute, I'm going to move on to somebody else. I don't mind coming back to you, but I have 177 people I'd like to get through.
All right.
Thank you.
Tracy Marinelli.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to start by thanking everyone. These are unprecedented times, and with them comes with a great deal of frustration. And I think as frustrated and upset as a lot of people are, everyone would be quite foolish to think that anybody on this screen is putting their head on their pillow at night, looking to do the wrong thing or trying to make a wrong decision. These are difficult decisions to make, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. So thank you for what you all are doing. With that being said, I just wanted to make a comment about some concerns I have with the testing. I think that the test is only as good as who you were in contact with 5 to 7 days prior to taking the test. So I do believe with all that these students have gone through emotionally and socially, and of course the academic piece, to put them through that, to have them have been around someone that day before or the day after really gives a false sense of hope, and also an unnecessary extra layer of chaos to add to their lives. So I just respectfully ask that you all reconsider that piece of it, because I don't think that I think that the negatives far outweigh the benefits.
Thank you, Mrs. Marinelli. Ian, I'll take another question.
Amy Kadaya.
Hi, this is Amy Cada, 57 Oak Ridge. I have a couple of questions. First, I want to say that just to speak to Dr. Glazer's point about the kids being in the school and it being a different environment, I will speak to the time that my kids were in school was extremely positive for them. They were happy to go. They were excited to go. Given the circumstances and how difficult things are and all the changes, they were actually had a very positive experience at school. They love their teachers. They love their friends. And I wanted to just share that. So they are definitely, I think, excited to go back in whatever capacity. I guess just a sort of comment is, I'm sure that people are aware of what has just happened in Montclair regarding the union encouraging teachers and to refuse to go back in person despite their planned return date. So I'm wondering, just kind of broadly, would there be other barriers that we could potentially be facing if within the next month, just because of all of the sort of, the discussion around what's happening in Montclair? I think it leaves people feeling a bit anxious. I'll speak for myself around that, anxious and a bit worried that, something could kind of come down the pike last minute and then there's a change to the plan. I really do hope the plan is the plan. And that's the first comment I have.
Okay, let's answer that one first, okay?
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Right now, our plan is set. But things change every day. We're following with Montclair, we have friends in Montclair, we have teachers in Montclair, we have relatives in Montclair. Their situation is more towards their building aspects and things we've already hopefully fixed in Nutley. So do I think we're going to run into those same roadblocks? I hope not. Could we? Certainly. As you understand, this is a day-to-day process. I hope we don't have that situation. But we are doing the best we can with the same age buildings at Montclair. They made reference to 100-year-old buildings. I wish we had only 100-year-old buildings. So we're aware of that. Do I think we could run into problems? Certainly, but I hope we don't. Is that, Dr. Glazer, good enough? You want to go further?
Well, yes, I think that their issues are somewhat different than ours. I can only tell you that our education association, our group of staff, not just our education association, our administrators association, our custodians association, our bus drivers associations, have been nothing short of remarkable. And I do mean that. Our staff has not only risen to every occasion, has worked longer and harder and figured out how to do this from day one, from March 13th, but they've come to us with solutions. We already have staff that are out sick. There aren't any subs. It's a real challenge. We have staff that volunteer and they get paid, but they have to volunteer to take on extra sections. We have people who have gone out on emergency leave and their supervisors have stepped in to teach their courses. So there's not any disruption in instruction. I cannot say enough about our staff, enough about our team, enough about all of the people that work in Nutley, literally from the very building secretary, custodian, paraprofessional, bus driver, up to me, who is not excited to come back into the building, see their children in person and work with them.
Thank you, Dr. Glazer. And Mrs. Cada, not that I mean to put you off. I don't mind coming back if you have more questions, but I'd like to move on to someone else. Mr. Viehmeister, please.
Yes, Kim Van.
Hi, yes. My name's Kim Van Wert at 34 Ivy Place. And I apologize if this was answered earlier on in the meeting, but in regards to obviously going back and specifically what happened, I know the concern came from a teacher from Radcliffe in regards to it being freezing in classrooms because windows had to be open, and that being at the time one of the multiple reasons why, along with vacations and others, that kids did not go back during that time. With a beginning March date that is being considered, how has that been rectified? So that is not a reason to come back after a week of being in the classroom and being told that they're freezing again and that they can't be in school.
Now, Mrs. Van Wert, if you don't mind, Dr. Glazer, the false innuendo that was out there that windows had to be open is false. They certainly, it helps to have the airflow. The windows are not required by law to be fully open. They can be open to a certain extent. We're hoping that by the time March 1st comes, the weather will change a little bit. Is the world different than you and I are used to? Certainly. Is it going to be a little cooler in the classrooms? Maybe sometimes, certainly. There's not a lot we can do about it to keep our children safe, but we have dealt with that. We've met with the union. We've met with our building inspectors, our buildings and grounds persons. We think we're prepared to bring the children back safely with the ventilation that is necessary, if that helps you.
No, that does. I don't have a problem with that. I'll gladly have my child wear another layer of clothing. I just bring that up as that was brought to us as parents by the union, and I wanted to know how that was being addressed. So I appreciate that answer. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Ian, I'll take another question, please.
Yes, Thomas Martone.
Hi, how are you? This is Tara Martone, 19 Manhattan Court. Thank you to everybody. I appreciate everybody's effort. I'm the PTO president at Radcliffe Elementary School. The teachers have been absolutely phenomenal. Shout out to Mr. Carney. I am curious if this COVID test is legally required and can it be challenged? It seems quite unethical to force this upon, especially my 6-year-old child. And will my children be denied an in-person education if we refuse to take this test? Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. And in all due respect, if I hope that's not your picture on I hope that's your husband or someone else, because I wouldn't want to argue. I wouldn't want to argue with the PTO president with a build like that. I know who you are. I'm teasing you, Dr. Glazer. I'm sure we'll be able to answer that. Thank you.
Actually, I don't have an answer. There is nothing in this world that cannot be legally challenged. Of course, everything can be. And this is not an ethical decision. This isn't an ethics or moral decision at all. This isn't a question of free and public education. And, you know, I honestly, without our attorney, he's been here on every meeting. He's not here tonight. Without our attorney, he has done the research on requiring for students and staff. We certainly wouldn't have gone down this road without consulting him. He certainly works in multiple districts and he has that legal precedent. So
Tara,
and we'll make sure that he shares that.
I will get that answer for you, Tara. And I'm certainly like you. I think if that is done in some school district, ours or someplace else, it will certainly be challenged, but I will get that answer back or direction from our attorney and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next person is just identified as soccer coach.
Yes. Good evening. This is David K, 706 Bloomfield Avenue. I have two questions. Number one, I think the number was around 548 districts are in New Jersey. I'd like to know if there's any examples and the number of examples that can be provided as to where this strategy came up with for pre-testing before return to school, how the Nutley Board of Ed decided to use this strategy. Are there any examples in New Jersey that can be provided?
Again, our recommendation came from our medical professionals.
So, excuse me, time out. Soccer coach, you need to mute yourself. Go ahead, Dr. Glazer.
So the recommendation came from our medical professionals and was vetted by the district attorney. And as we just said to Mrs. Martone, we'll try and get that information to share with you. And there are even more districts.
Okay, so the second question I have is, upon February 22nd, there's going to be all this testing, anywhere between, I don't know, a couple thousand up to 5,000, I think you had made a number of. What is going to be the threshold or the benchmark that you're looking to obtain for return to school? Is it 2%, 5%?
There is no metric or benchmark. Thank you. It doesn't work like that. As we've done our other testing, what happens is you test, you quarantine until you get your results. If you are positive, the health department tells you your date that you quarantine through, your 14 days. And after that 14-day quarantine, you are deemed safe to return. We are not holding out a reopening of schools based on the testing. If that is what you believe, that's a misconception. This is more to safely bring everybody into school because we know our buildings are safe and we would like to keep them that way.
And soccer coach, before you come back, I know you realize that everyone will not be coming back that particular day. Some are going to want to remain virtual. We're coming back in a hybrid, which still gives the parents the right to keep them virtual, work out a different system. So understand, even though there's 5,000 people that were mentioned, they're not all coming back March the 1st.
Okay, and then one final question I have. So we've got a child that's also in a different district, right in Rutherford. You know, they've had multiple closures since September as they've tried their best to have in-person through hybrid. My question is, as we find positive tests occur, are the schools going to be closed down for a 2-week period, or is it just going to be what Dr. Glazer said, which is those individuals and I guess some form of contact tracing will occur for anybody and possibly that was in contact with those particular positive tested students? What's the...
So there's a current guideline. And then as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there's been new guidelines from the state that were released last Friday that were to make it easier to stay in school. And I said that our team needed to review those in terms of our restart and reentry plan from a brief look at it, from my look at it. And remember, we heard about it from the press. We didn't get this information from the Department of Education, even still. It appears that rather than 2 instances and close the school, you will be able to isolate the cohort.
Soccer coach, I'm sure you appreciate that. It's changing every day. We get updates constantly. Sometimes in the morning, they change by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, you know, they're looking to relax it a little bit. No matter what you think about the vaccine, I think it's helping. The statistics say it's helping. So I think as that starts to move throughout New Jersey, we're going to see the restrictions change as far as our back to school is concerned. Thank you.
I have one last question.
Let's try soccer coach. Soccer coach, excuse me. Oh, time out. Excuse me. Let's try somebody else. I can always come back to you if you don't mind. Ian.
Felicia Gustosa.
Hi, Felicia Gustoso, 54 Fisher Avenue. First, I wanted to say thank you to everybody for everything you do. We're so happy with everything. I just wanted, I guess it's kind of, I'm not sure if it was a question or a comment. I'm just thinking at the rate that this vaccine is being rolled out, is the assumption that all teachers are going to be given the chance to get vaccinated because they need the 2 doses. So there's that 3-4 week period. So is the assumption that the teachers are going to, or the teachers, custodial staff, everybody, that they're all going to be given the chance to get this vaccine and then they're going to be asked to come in, or are they still being asked to come in, even though, because I personally, I teach in a different district and I applied for the vaccine on January 6th and I still haven't heard anything yet. So I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, well, if I were you, personally, if I were you, I would call every day because I continue to hear that from people. And I've received my first shot, waiting for my second shot February 1st, but I'm probably a little bit older than you. But some of our other members have continued to call and were able to get in a lot faster. I certainly will be expressing my feeling to the governor through our county executive, who I talk to on a regular basis, of our frustration of our teachers being not at the top of the level. So I would hope that the teachers will be pushed up there. It's their choice whether they want to have it or not, but I certainly would encourage everybody to have it. But yes, we're going to be putting a letter together to the governor to emphasize the importance of our staff, teachers, staff, custodians, administrators, everyone receiving the shot.
But the chances of it happening prior to the start of school for everybody that wants it, probably not. My test date is February 25th, just to give you an example. So in the other districts throughout the state, they are having to come back prior to the vaccine, and that's why we want to prioritize getting it out to educators as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ian?
Yes. Dawn is next. Dawn, you can unmute. Moving on, Mr. Marchand.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to start again, just, thank you. I do appreciate everything that everyone's doing and, to try and get these kids back. I do understand that. I just hope you can understand and appreciate, the parents' frustration. I mean, we're paying $2,000 a month that we shouldn't be to have our kids in daycare watching their teachers on a screen. So, I mean, the frustration is, that's where the frustration comes from. And obviously they're not getting the same level of education there. But anyway, you had mentioned relying on, the health officials to tell you, to guide us on how to return. But pediatricians are recommending, are not testing kids that are asymptomatic. So, it kind of seems contrary to what we're trying to do here, that you want to test everyone when pediatricians will not test an asymptomatic child.
Mr. Marchand, I really appreciate your interest, your input, and I know you've heard it before, but maybe you haven't. We have the same concerns. You're frustrated. We're frustrated. Every one of the board members here has family, whether son, grandsons, in my case, granddaughters, children, relatives. We're all in this same boat that you are as far as our concerns are. We're trying to get it resolved. We will take the input that we received tonight. When our staff meets again with the medical professionals, we will discuss everything that was brought up tonight. I can guarantee you, Dr. Glazer will not miss anything that was discussed tonight when we go before our medical experts.
Okay, and one more thing, I just wanted to know, you mentioned the requirements for returning in March. I wanted to know, what are your considerations for, expanding that schedule in the future? You know, what levels do we need to be at, or what criteria do we need to meet to go more than 2 half days a week?
All right, Mr. Marchand, we're going to answer that, and then we're going to move on to somebody else, but thank you.
Thank you.
So again, as I said earlier,
Mr. Marchand, you need to mute yourself.
thank you. As I said earlier in the presentation portion, we are still constrained through social distancing. We're still constrained with our space in our buildings. We have a finite amount of space. So as long as the executive order is requiring that social distancing, we're going to be at that level of hybrid. It's my hope for outcome, as Mr. Kaczynski said, as we can have more vaccines, as we can have less community spread, that we're able to have that social distancing capacity changed. The governor has made reference to this. Judy Persicelli, the state health manager, I don't think she's a manager, maybe she's a director, whatever she is, has made reference to changing that. And as soon as we are able to do that, then we would be able to move up to 5 days a week, maybe 2 half, still half days, but getting more time in and continuing to build up from there.
Thank you, Dr. Glazer. Ian?
Dawn, are you on now? Dawn?
Next, Ian.
Amy Kaida?
Hi, it's Amy again, 57 Oak Ridge. I just had one more question for you regarding the how many families will be returning hybrid. So I guess my question is, are you going to reassess that given how much has changed in terms of families' level of comfort sending their children back in person, given the new guidelines with testing? Will you look at that again? Will we be sent another survey to sort of see where families are at now? And so just kind of looking at those numbers, I wonder if that would also have an impact on the planning and what you'd be able to do for some of the earlier questions around drop-offs and pickups and things like that in terms of volume of kids. So I'm just wondering if you're going to reassess that. Thank you.
So when we planned to come back originally, each of the principals pre-K to 6 cohorted the students, right? There's cohort A, cohort B. We didn't have to use that during the virtual instruction, but those cohorts exist. So the expectation would be when we come back hybrid, unless you make that choice to take advantage of the 100% virtual, we're all coming back hybrid. But yes, we will be, I don't know if surveying is the right word, but definitely questioning families. So at the elementary level, we know what that cohort's going to look like. From 7 to 12, we have class size, right? And that class size is already built into the cohort. It'll look a little different, but I do believe from our conversations, we can make it work just the same. I don't know if Kent or Janine want to add anything to that.
No, I think you covered it, Dr. Glazer. Thanks.
I think you're good, Dr. G.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Kita. Ian?
Dr. Coach?
I had just one last question regarding current virtual screen time. As I said earlier, I got a son who's in Rutherford School District. They just came out with a change this week, and they're dropping by 25% because they found the mental health, coupled with some of the other things that some of the other parents have spoken about in the New York Times article regarding Clark County, Las Vegas. They decided that they were going to reduce some of the virtual screen time. We got a first grader who's currently doing 4 to 4.5 hours currently a day of virtual screen time. And then for additional assistance that we've been able to get, it's upwards of some days 5+ hours. Corporate America and a lot of companies have, changed those rulings internally to be less than 3 hours a day virtual, and they're even giving the opportunity for many companies to do 1 full day of no video, you're just audio.
Thank you, soccer coach.
Is the school considering looking at any of those types of changes for the mental health of our students?
Thank you, soccer coach, but Dr. Glazer or Mr. Benya, I'm sure we are concerned. I'm sure we have an answer that we can work on.
I was going to let you speak to it, but Kent, either. Kent.
I think we can both speak to it, Doc.
Yes.
But it's something on our minds all the time. We're constantly getting feedback, looking at how much screen time. At our secondary level, I can speak more to. That's kind of why we went synchronous in the morning. We considered that from the feedback in the summer, and looking at a lot of things there as well. But we're continuing to look at these things. Janine, I don't know if you want to jump in with elementary.
Yes. Yeah. I will say that this fall we really tried to find a balance with that instructional screen time by moving to more live instruction, which we felt was really actively engaging the kids, whereas some of the pre-recorded screen time last year was a little bit more passive. So we've been having a lot of conversations with teachers about the best use of that type of screen time, but I definitely would encourage, especially elementary parents, you know your child best. And if you're finding that your child is struggling and there is too much screen time, have that conversation with our teachers, because I've been speaking to many teachers who've had to amend their schedules due to specific students who might need more or less support on the screen, honestly, in either direction. But just know that our teachers, I know, are very flexible with parents who voiced concerns about that, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, and soccer coach, we appreciate that, and we are aware of it, as we all are, and I'm sure our team will be on top of it. Ian.
Yes, Anita PM. Sure, I got that wrong. Sorry, Anita.
Yes, hi, it's Anita Stroxton, 46 Funston Place. I actually have 3 questions, so hopefully I'll be able to address them. The first one is why our district is not having a 3- and 2-day rotation so our kids can get the most out of the hybrid schedule.
All right, let's just stop right there. Obviously, you haven't been on this conversation for the last 2.5 hours. We want to get there. We are just not there yet. March the 1st, we're looking to move in that direction. So we can't be there yet simply because of our numbers, but March the 1st, we'll be looking to move back into school, and our goal is to get to more time.
Okay, that's great. And do you see any other issues that might come up as far as coming back to school in March that have not come up as of yet?
And again, I'm going to apologize for you. We've already covered this numerous times. We don't see them, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. We think our buildings are prepared. We know our teachers are always prepared. We know our staff is prepared, but can things happen with our buildings, with our staff, with our custodial staff, whatever, with the staff? Anything can happen. But right now, we're looking at our objective of March the 1st, coming back with some type of a baseline for our children and our teachers, and hopefully we don't run into any issues. But if we follow the direction of other schools around us, they look at the same thing. They come in, such as Lyndhurst, they're in last week. This week they've closed 3 schools. Garfield was supposed to come back. They're putting off till the middle of March they're opening. Belleville came in, but they don't have enough teachers to bring all their students back in. So these are issues that hopefully don't arise in Nutley. We think by staying out, the amount of time we've had to stay out is going to give us a safer baseline to work from, but time will tell, unfortunately. But I hope we don't have any more hurdles.
Okay, and my last question, why hasn't the district advocated for teachers to get vaccinated as soon as the vaccine program rolled out?
And again, I'm going to apologize for you because we've been here for 2.5 hours. We've talked about that. We are advocating for our teachers to be first in line. along with the policemen, firemen, nurses, teachers. They should have been there. We are advocating, we've always advocated that. We are sending a letter to the governor. Maybe we'll try to reach out for him personally, or at least his staff. We don't have that type of influence, but at least with his staff, to let them know how important it is for our teachers to have the capability of being vaccinated. We are doing the best we can to do that.
Well, that was exactly my point, because you said the letter will be sent out. Why hasn't it been sent out, like, let's say, beginning of January?
Because and I'm not going to get into the political reasons, but before this, our teachers were in class A1. Now they've been dropped to B1, which is, in my personal opinion, only my personal opinion, a disgrace. But once that happened, now we're going to go and let our opinion be known to the powers to be.
Okay, thank you for taking your time to answer my questions.
Thank you very much. Ian? Sorry,
Mike,
Dr. Glazer.
Yeah, hi, Mike Toney, 211 Satterwaith Avenue. Just quickly, I didn't get a chance to say this the first time, but and I have said this in my written correspondence to the board and Dr. Glazer. I certainly do, even though I'm very passionate.
Mike, excuse me for 1 second. And I don't mean to be a pain in the neck. I understand you've contacted an attorney to sue the Nutley Board of Education. If that's the case, I don't think it behooves you or me or any of the board members to continue with the conversation. Thank you.
No, that's not true.
Well, that's what I've been told. Then you need to tell me that you're not suing the Nutley Board of Education.
Mr. Kaczynski, I was about to just express my appreciation
And
to
I
the Board of
understand that,
Education.
and I really appreciate that. I really do. I wouldn't want to put you or the board in a compromising position, since I understand you're in the middle of a lawsuit with us. And I really do appreciate your input. Believe me, I do. I'm concerned.
There is no lawsuit. I don't know why you're floating that information out publicly. I don't know what you mean you've been told, but that's really not a fair comment by you.
Okay.
But I'll finish my compliments, because I do, despite that very odd surfacing of information that's not true, I do understand and appreciate that the members of the board and the staff do want to get the kids back in school as soon as possible. What I would say, as you know, I've shared with you a number of different studies by highly credentialized people, and you've said that you're relying on state, county, and local health officials. Sometimes you need to ask for second opinions, because the information that you may be relying on may not be the best information to go by. So when you do consult with these health officials, I would recommend that you present them with these studies. These are not studies from me. These are studies from, as I mentioned, highly credentialized professionals that have indicated that schools are not a vector of transmission, and therefore there's no excess risk to having kids in the classroom. Then we're all living our lives right now. Life has not stopped. So there is no excess risk of transmission in schools. So that needs to be a factor in all your deliberations. Thank you for your time.
And Mr. Gioni, I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry if I spoke out of turn. You're right. I probably should not have said that publicly. All I can do is I say I'm sorry if that's not happening, but I always appreciate your input. I've looked at the articles you've put out to us or talked to us about. I follow up on them, and we will consider, again, when we meet with the staff and our medical professionals, everything that you brought forward and everyone else brings forward. Thank you.
And I just want to share that, obviously the same, we're in the same, I don't want to say groups, but I see the same research, the same articles, obviously, that you do. And, when I'm meeting with Hackensack Meridian, there's usually 7, 8, 9 other districts, other superintendents on those calls with me. And we do what's called a jigsaw of those articles, where everybody reads them. We go into breakout sessions and discuss them. And the epidemiologists talk to us as well. And as I've said to you through email, we agree. We don't disagree. And and not just our local, state, and county health professionals, but 2 district physicians and partners with the medical center and a partnership with a testing agency that's part of Rutgers University. So we really reached broadly. You're right. We are all in agreement. And now the question is, you know, getting this effectuated, getting those kids in by the date. And I hope that you know that we're on the same page, all of us.
Thank you again, Mr. Joni. Anything else you'd like to say before we try another person?
No, like I said, I appreciate everyone's effort. I would say though, as everyone that's followed this should know, that there's been a lot of epidemiologists and other experts that were woefully wrong from the beginning of this. So we can't necessarily rely on anecdotal pieces of information and different models, you know. So there's been a lot wrong, and some of that's understandable because this was a new virus and nobody knew what we were facing. But sometimes you need to look for a second opinion and not just solely rely on certain sets of information. I just ask you to take that into consideration as you continue to in your efforts, which I know you're trying very hard to do, to get the kids back in school where they belong. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank all the parents. I don't think we've ever taken one opinion and gone with it. We take Dr. Glazer and the board and I are in conversation on a daily basis with everything that somebody read in Arizona or read in California or read in the New York Times. We review them all. So I appreciate everyone's input. Ian, can we have someone else, please?
Yes, Donna Farrar.
I was going to say, her mic was on. Yes, go ahead. Mrs. Ferrara.
Hi. Yes. Donna Ferrara, 34 Roosevelt Street. As an advocate, I'm very concerned about the self-contained students with IEPs, and of course, them not doing well virtually with OT speech. They're losing their services. So when you start, I was hoping in my district, they have come in the self-contained classes 4 days a week. They have been getting their services. We've been in person since September. And oh, what happened? I don't know what just happened.
Nothing. We still hear you.
Okay. So I was just hoping that maybe you could look at that for the children, especially in self-contained, the ABA services, that they can go in at least the 4 half days a week instead of doing a hybrid schedule for them. I'm really concerned about their needs. We also, in our district, when we saw children that had IEPs but were mainstreamed in the classrooms, when we saw the amount of children that were not coming back in and staying virtually, our superintendent then offered for the children that we saw struggling or that had IEPs to have more days come in. So I'm hoping that's something that you can look at once you get back in, because I'm very concerned about these children.
Without a doubt. I think honestly, the district's been talking about it already. As you know, we have a strong advocate on our board who has made this known to us, but Mr. Banya, Ms. Loconsola have brought it to our attention as board members quite often. It is a concern of all of us. And one of our parents is dealing with the situation. So hopefully we are on top of it. We need to bring those children back as soon as we can and give them as much real time as we can. But Mr. Banya or Ms. Loconsola, Dr. Glazer, someone might have something to say.
And I also just have one more suggestion that I was reading on the chat. We started with the Mindful Mondays, and now we have Mondays where the kids are doing work virtually, but not on as much screen time as, from what I understand, it looks like there's a lot of screen time. That gave the teachers we actually use it as for office hours to meet the kids, or we use it for planning and prep time, because the teachers need a break too. It's very difficult teaching in this
Yes.
environment. Another
Yes.
suggestion, that's all I could do is give a suggestion.
Okay, that's a good one, and I'm sure most of us feel the same way. I know we're talking about that behind the scenes, but I'm sure that discussion will be ongoing. Janine or Kent would like to chime in.
I can add, Mr. Kaczynski, that we are always looking at the ways to get our students in the most, especially in the self-contained classes. I know we work with the principals of the various schools to look at capacity and getting them in. I will say to your other comment that we balance all types of feedback with screen time and different things coming from the community, teachers. We're trying to manage it the best we can with the feedback, what's best for the students. So we appreciate your feedback on Mindful Mondays. We appreciate all the feedback in the chat. We're taking notes, and we will revisit everything to do the best thing for our students.
Yeah, Ken, I would just add to that, on the elementary level, we do have a lot of health and wellness opportunities through Meredith Gerkins, our coordinator of school counseling, and our school counselors have been running some drop-in sessions for students. And we also have a new social emotional program, Competent Kids Caring Communities, that's rolling out, that a lot of our teachers have said has really opened up that, more informal dialogue with students and giving them just time to unwind and share. But those resources and the dates of those meetings are all on the website on the school counseling page that Ms. Gerkins updates pretty regularly. So I would definitely use that as a resource as well.
Mrs. Ferrara, are you okay with that response? We will definitely follow up on it.
Yes, just suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, I'll take another person, please.
Yes, Dawn, you can unmute.
Yes, hi. I have a two-part question. My first part of the question is this: why are Catholic schools have been going to school since day one in September? They abide by the same rules that we're supposed to go by, but the kids, there have been no issues. My niece and nephew have been going to a Catholic school since September, 5 days a week, and have no problems. Why are our kids not in school like they are?
Sir, could you please say your name and address, and then we'll...
I'm sorry. It's Michael Gajewski, 109 Mapes Avenue.
Hi. I don't have an answer for you. We have several private schools in Nutley. As a matter of fact, we have staff members that have students in the private and Catholic schools. And the only comparison I can make for you is class size and the numbers of classes in those buildings. I'm not familiar with them, so I don't have another answer. If someone else does, please jump in.
The only answer I have, and I've done some reading on it, and it comes strictly down to class size. And I've been down to look at the class on Abundant Life on Washington Avenue. Not that I've been in there, but I've talked to some people. The class size is a lot less than we are used to. Their building space gives them a lot more space available inside the building, but I don't know the real answer. That's the only thing that I can see, or the only thing that I've read about.
All right. My second part of my question would then be that I've heard you talk a lot about epidemiologists and doctors that you're referring to. My nephew attends a school in New York City, Regis High School. And if you're familiar with the school, their advisor is Dr. Fauci, who's advising the entire country. He has advised them weeks ago that there is no reason that they're not in school and those children are back in school. So if the leading epidemiologist in the country, his high school is going back to school, why are our kids not?
We are.
Well, no, they're already in school. We're waiting till March. They're already in school. And he advised them to go back to school. So why are your doctors saying no, but the guy that's advising the president...
It's not the doctors. It was the decision not to cancel the winter break. People felt very strongly that they needed that break. And it is that break that if we went back in a week and then we had to close the next week and start all over again, that it would be not advantageous to our students or staff from a health standpoint.
But they're going to school since December or late November, and they haven't had any issues. They haven't had any closures. So I don't understand, if the leading epidemiologist in the country is sending his high school back, why are our kids waiting till March?
Charlie, you're muted.
I appreciate your input. And again, we're making reference to what is going on in Nutley. Our numbers in Nutley don't allow us to be where we want to be. I can't talk for New York City or Camden or Trenton. It doesn't make any sense. The Nutley parents, the Nutley district is not ready to bring our children back with the amount of numbers that we have in Nutley. There's no other logical answer except that right now. And we are going back. March the 1st is our date. I realize that they might have been back in January, December. I can't help that. Our numbers will not allow us to do that.
So so Catholic school kids are going to have a year's advantage on our children in education. A year.
I can't argue that. I don't see that as being realistic.
I can tell you that I can tell you that my nephew is in the 4th grade and he doesn't miss a day of school. And I can tell you from seeing his schoolwork compared to my son in 5th grade, he's light years ahead of us because they don't miss school. I don't understand how he's going to school and we're not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Janusky. Ms. Loconsolo, did you want to say something or not?
Yeah, I just would echo what you're saying too. There's definitely a difference between virtual and in-person learning, but our students are still getting education and they're getting their classes daily from their teachers, and they're really doing an excellent job, I have to say.
Charlie, can I just say something real quick?
Yeah, you can, Mrs. Arrow. Go ahead.
I just would like to say that every child's situation, every child's experience is different. I do not feel in any way, shape, or form my son is losing a year. I actually feel he's thriving, and I know he's an individual, and I don't speak for everybody, but I really think everybody's situation is different. So I just think everybody needs to also remember that what fits for one child doesn't fit for everybody.
Thank you very much. Ian, I'll take another question.
Yeah, Kirsten? You've lowered your hand. I guess it was off now. Nicole Davina?
Oh, hello. I'm sorry. I'm here. I'm sorry. Hi, it's Kristen, 65 Washington Avenue. I know somebody had just mentioned the Mindful Mondays and possibly a suggestion to bringing it back, but my concern is my daughter is one of the children who is struggling with virtual. I have amazing teachers, and Washington School, the staff has been amazing with helping her. But my concern is, like, for example, today, it was a struggle to get her on. It then escalates into tears and health issues, and then it stems down to my younger kindergarten child. And now they didn't go to school, and they both were marked absent for something that realistically I can't control, and it's out of my hand. So my concern is, why is my child being jeopardized for an absence when in fact they need that Mindful Monday for a break, or they need to not be able to be in front of a computer? We hand in the homework. We try to hand in the homework. We try to do everything on Monday. It's just the logging on is seriously affecting their health.
All right, Mrs. Alvarez, and I feel for you, and I feel for what you're going through. I don't think this forum is the right place to discuss this. I would prefer you to get in touch with Mr. Banya or Janine Loconsolo, who are both on the website right now, to resolve that issue rather than put everything public. I think that would be better for you to discuss it with them. I'd appreciate you doing that.
Okay, what were the names again? Because I've never been informed of
Okay.
this is something that I've been mentioning since September.
Unfortunately, just go into the chat and you'll see Janine Loconsolo. And if you haven't talked to them, you're missing a terrible education.
Yeah.
So speak with them, Kent Banya or Janine Loconsolo, and I think you will be able to resolve your issues with them.
Okay, great. Thank
We
you.
placed our emails in the chat for you, Mrs. Alvarez.
Very much.
Okay, Ian, I'll take another question.
Erica, your hand's still up?
No, I'm good.
Nicole Davina?
Hi, everybody. Nicole Davino, 110 Crestwood Avenue.
Just want to say thank you very much for all that you're doing. Quick question and a statement. Question is, if the numbers start to decrease within the next month or so, would you reconsider not testing the children?
Again, I'll bring everything to our advisors. I'm not a medical professional. The numbers are just part of it, right? It's about the spread, but we'll absolutely keep all of these comments to the medical people.
Okay, thank you. My comment is, as an emergency room nurse for about 18, 19 years, until you've had to strap down a child for testing, it's absolutely, it's horrible. Now put all of these children, especially the little ones, on a line for testing, and they're hearing the child before them cry and scream and kick. This is not going to be good. This is not good for their mental health. Not at all. Not by all. And until you have done it personally, I'm going to ask you to just put that in your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Navina. We appreciate your input and appreciate the job that you're doing out there. And I think we all have those concerns, but as we move forward, hopefully we'll come up with a better resolution. But thank you for your input.
That's fine. Maybe reconsider your testing method. Sticking swabs up children's noses are not fun for the provider, not fun for the kid.
I could imagine. Thank you. I've had it done quite often, but I'm not a kid.
You're not a child, sir.
I think I said that. I said I can't imagine my 6th grade or 5th grader being happy with it either. But we'll get to that bridge when we get there. Thank you. Ian, I'll take another one, please.
Angela Kay.
Yes, Angela Kay, 706 Bloomfield Avenue. My first question is you said you were going to send out another survey about people going back to hybrid come in March. Is that going to affect the existing cohorts from when we were already in school?
No, not at all. Again, the expectation is that everybody is coming back. The survey is more for the people that want to choose 100% virtual. I don't know, Kent, Janine, do you want to add anything to that?
No, the way we cohort allows us to go in and out of being virtual or in person for those hybrid days. So it would be contacting the building principal to make a change at that time.
Okay, my other question goes back to the testing. Will the option to have your child do a saliva test be given to us? I have a 6-year-old and we have to strap her down and give her shots. So there's no way she is allowing that to happen. I just didn't know if we would have that option.
So I had said earlier in the meeting that we would absolutely bring that back to the testing administrator. They made their recommendations, and that's why we're asking these questions. That's why I said it's a little bit early to be having all of the conversations because I don't have all the information, but we'll absolutely bring it back.
That question, I can guarantee you, will be put forward to the medical experts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ian?
There's nobody else who currently has their hand raised.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any old business to come before the board? Any new business to come before the board? I'll take an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.